Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelava, and this is Speedplay Papal Italy number 19. We left off in a war against Russia, China, Japan, France, Britain, all of these countries. We're doing well against the French, we're holding off against the Russians, and the Poles are just seeping into our country unopposed. So let's go ahead and create a war plan that will cover our basic agenda. First things first, we're going to just race across France and get them not out of the war, we'll keep them in the war, just occupied. We will then bring our navy up and around to keep the British in Britain and try to cut off the Poles and the Russians from getting into our countryside. Next up, we could go into the British. We also have to go against the Ottomans and get that war done. And, well, that's not exactly how it's going to go. Realistically, the second step isn't quite what it looks like. So first of all, we'll set this up. The green is phase 1. That is all the first things we'll do. Phase 2 is going to be our invasion of the Ottomans, and then Phase 3A and Phase 3B. Phase 3A is the invasion of Britain, Phase 3B is marching in through Hungary into Poland, Lithuania, and Phase 3A is optional. We may or may not attack Great Britain, depending just on if we're able to get enough troops there, if we're able to get the position secured enough. So we're going to just defend everywhere we can. We have large armies moving up against the Poles. There are a lot of very significant battles happening against the French and also the British who are assisting the French. So we bring our forces up and just generally around to fight them as best we can. We are managing to make a defensive line against the Russians. We're going to just spread our armies out. That way they can't occupy any of our territories. They'll have to fight battles, and we'll be able to just bring forces as we need them. We're doing fairly well in our French campaign. We are getting a little bit bogged down, but all the battles are going in our favor. The Russians are attacking us, although we can just bring reinforcements rather swiftly. We did win a battle against the French. They retreated. We'll just follow them, and we'll just keep picking off these straggling armies, as this is definitely a front that is going very well, especially compared to all of the others, mainly the Central Front. Against the Russians, we're doing all right. We have enough men. Against Poland, that is a slightly different story. We're winning the two battles we're in, but they have a lot of men. Against France, we're still moving forward, and we're just kind of going from front to front, putting out any fires as best we can, and just keeping our armies from being destroyed. Ultimately, though, we're still making great progress against the French. So long as we make progress against the French quicker than they make progress against us, that's kind of a net benefit. Plus we can finish sieging out the French far quicker than they can siege us out, so we don't really have to worry about losing everything. Also, the Japanese are attacking our colonies. That's fine. Alright, so that all said and done, we're going to split half of our navy off to cut off any additional British reinforcements. And the trick to this is we don't want to send so few ships that they can all get sunk, and we don't want to leave behind so few that the ones we leave behind get sunk. We focus back onto the army situation. We're winning fairly well. We have to bring some troops from France to go deal with the Poland Lithuanians. We might fall into the World War I German trap, where you need to take one country out of the war immediately before you can wheel around. If we don't, we'll just end up in two fronts, or in this case 3 fronts, that we just kind of have to juggle back and forth and eventually be defeated. So it's much more important that we actually fully destroy the French and then turn around, because we won't have to keep all these men guarding the front lines. And that is the plan at any rate. We are fighting some minor naval engagements, but we have the strait blockaded. The British cannot bring any additional men over. The Poles are now touching the Mediterranean. We have definitely fallen back there, although everywhere else is more or less being held together very well. We did just win a major battle against the Russians. As long as they keep retreating, we're fine. We have to go fight on the edge. We are very close to sieging out the French. We are on the North Atlantic coast. We are being attacked at the entrance to Gibraltar. We will take our fleet away from the English Channel to reinforce, as we cannot lose the Mediterranean. It's alright if additional British forces attack us, we just cannot let them attack us everywhere in the Mediterranean. We did win that battle against the Poles. We haven't lost a battle yet, I don't believe, and if we have, it was a minor one. Our forces are moving forward and around, hopefully encircling this last British army. well, maybe not last, but this British army. Our navy is about to reinforce. We've cleared out the entire area, and moving forward, the British are attacking us across the channel. We can't really stop that as they have control over the straits. We send more ships in order to just make sure that we don't lose that battle. We cannot afford to lose the battle, no matter what happens. Everywhere else, we're more or less staying at least in decent position. We did just defeat that British army fairly well. We are starting to push back the Polish in the central area of our country. That is great news. There are several battles occurring, although we are doing very well against them, and we have enough reserve troops that it doesn't really matter. We're starting to do very good against the Poles. I don't imagine that pocket will last very much longer, and we'll be able to just clean that up and hopefully get our defenses fully in order. So we've spent a good portion of this war trying to get to a reasonable defensive location. Hopefully we'll be able to do that, probably just in time to move away from it and attack. Speaking of, our Casus Belli against the Ottomans is complete. We can go ahead and first get all of these fires put out, or at least managed, and then we will justify a war against Hungary and go to war against the Ottomans. We have a lot of troops on the border with the Ottomans. We'll just need to rush through, fully occupy them, and then wait until we get enough jingoism to make peace, which means we did immediately call an election, as that is one of the most important things. Also, we're going to go to war to annex India, and make it so that our war goal is the liberation of India. That way, when we defeat all of our enemies in this world war, we'll have them free India, then we'll immediately annex it. That is going to be the goal worth all of this bloodshed. Also, there's something about freeing Mongolia, but that doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. So that all said and done, our armies move into the Ottoman Empire, where hopefully we will be able to more or less just overthrow them. We are facing a few slight battles that are somewhat worrying. We've nearly completely defeated the French, so we can bring our forces around and hopefully get a large defensive wall up. So in fact, we start sending our forces over to occupy all of the border territories, and I realize that it's entirely pointless for us to fully man our puppet states, as they're not in the war, so it doesn't matter. We will just man the smallest border we can make out of them, and then just bring reinforcements all across, and now the enemy, or the enemies, will be left on their side of the border, or they'll have to attack our armies, and we'll get dig-in bonuses. So, with all of that said and done, we can focus more or less on the Ottomans again, as we spread our forces out throughout their countryside, and just generally hope to win the war. We are doing very well in these battles. You'll notice the casualties are very one-sided. That is great news. The occasional battle is not one-sided at all, and that's occasionally rather terrible. We're going to try to get the British to attack us again, and even on this, and they do immediately. And that's the thing, is even on our front line, the enemies are willing to march in and attack us, which is pretty good news, as that actually helps us quite a bit drain their armies away. Unfortunately, they've realized we're trying to justify a war against Hungary and slowed that down, which admittedly is reasonable given their circumstances. So we should be able to hold this static line until our war justification is complete. We didn't win that naval engagement, but we brought the rest of our navy out to hold the Mediterranean, so we haven't lost control of the Mediterranean in the most technical of senses. So that means no invasion of Great Britain, as we won't even be able to blockade their strait, so we'll have to keep an army there. Other than that, we're ready to just statically defend ourselves, press forward against the Ottomans, and just try to defeat all of our enemies in static, defensive locations until we've finally cleaned them up enough that we're able to go march through Hungary and bring the fight to first Poland, then Russia, then China itself. Of course, that's still a ways away. We're still not even done with our occupation of the Ottoman Empire. Which means there is still some amount of time left to wait. We are winning all the battles where the enemies attack us, and the Ottomans are pretty much on their last legs now. A Russian army did seep through, which is a bit of a problem, although we have enough forces that we can take care of it without pulling men from the line. And that's really the most important thing, is that we can defend ourselves and defeat any groups that manage to seep through without opening up causeways for the enemies to attack. I'm not sure if you saw it when we were fighting the French, but a large group of French armies managed to sneak through our lines, and just cause the whole area to turn to chaos. That was also the issue we faced against the Poles, where we're now fighting that Russian army. It looks as though there's a big Ottoman revolt. We're just going to let that be. And with that all where it's at, we can look. We did most of these first two phases. Phase 3A we're going to cut out, and we can now go in and begin Phase 3B, the invasion of Poland. And both Poland and Russia have very few brigades left. China, however, if we'll take a quick look, has 3 million men left in their armies. So here's what you all have been waiting for, our war against the Ottomans, and here's the war against China. 3.8 million dead on their side, 800,000 on ours. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow.